So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for spending some time with us tonight. Remember that you're investing in yourself with each one of these workshops, and it's really incredible that you're taking some time out to go ahead and learn something that could be potentially the first step in a journey of, unknown futures that could be so wonderful for every single one of you guys. So applause to you. I'm Melvin. I actually work for Career Karma, and I'm in charge of discussions. And so if any of you all gotten a chance to play around with discussions or just check it out within the app, go ahead and unmute yourselves, feel free to chime in or just use the chat. But yeah, have you guys gotten a chance to use discussions at all?
I have.
Right. Yeah, Mia's all up in there. We have a couple of people that haven't. Okay, so great.
I haven't yet.
Okay, yeah, so this is actually good for me to know. And so what you guys can kind of, I guess, look at discussions being kind of like a town hall, or even if you've used communities that are online like Reddit or Quora or even Facebook groups, right? It's kind of like a collective of people that are kind of posting and sharing, commenting, whatever types of content. Right now, currently, we only really have text and photo capabilities right now, but we're, as we continue and add on to the developments, we'll for sure start incorporating a lot more things. But it's actually a really great place to get to know the community that's outside of your prospective squad. And so with squads right now, it's really awesome to have your tiny little group of something super specific. But before, we didn't really have an outlet for everyone to kind of interpollinate ideas and get to know each other. And one of my favorite things that we have so far that Mia's actually mentioned before is add a chapter. And so you can actually read about my chapter, and I kind of talk about my mother's story and how I say that her life story is one of the greatest books that I've ever read, because I feel like through people's experiences, by putting yourself out there and just really drinking the wealth of knowledge that other people have, it can kind of propel you to that next step. And so I think that that's going to be a really wonderful place for each one of you guys to connect, to get to know each other. And then we also have different topics such as job search. We have the workshops weekly. So use all of these resources to your advantage. And hopefully by the end of this workshop, you guys have the toolkit. You guys have the toolkit to go ahead and, sorry, let me mute a couple of you guys. I'm just gonna go ahead and mute all of you all for right now. You guys all have the toolkit at the end of this workshop to go ahead and post a project, your very first website, right? And just get feedback, or sometimes it's hard and it's difficult to just get started. And having this built in a habit of checking into the discussions and posting your portfolios, and you all are doing this together. And so it would be super motivational to see everyone's websites up and running on the portfolios discussion. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and let our guest of honor, Mia Peace, introduce herself. So Mia, you want to take it away?
So as Melvin said, I'm Mia. For anybody who's new here, I'll do a little background. I am a disabled mother of 4 who has been in and out of HTML and CSS for the last 13 years. What I mean by that is that I have set it down and come back to it several times. So you never know where your journey is going to start, but you sure as heck control where it's going to end. So that's what I'm doing here now. I attend Kenzie Academy full-time as a UX engineering student, which means that I do UX design, which is user experience. And what that means is I design the elements that you see. I design how they're put up on the page. I coordinate with what works for users and what doesn't, and I build a bridge between users and the companies that I'm building for. The other hand of this would be software engineers who build the back end, like forms, the way that you log into a website and stuff like that, that's all back-end stuff. So while I say UX is between a company and its users, whereas software engineering is between a company and its servers. So that's a little bit about me. This week, we are going to be building a little bit on what we learned last week. I had some really great feedback about a couple of things that people wanted to go over or see how they worked. So I've actually been working on that. So if Melvin's okay with it, I'm going to go ahead and get us started with all the good stuff.
Yeah, and Mia, for those people that actually weren't able to join us last time, you mind just giving like a pretty brief rundown of the things that you've kind of covered?
So yeah, last week we went over just the basis of building a website and kind of how to go over it. I actually have it pulled up, so I was going to show everybody. This is actually what we're working on this week. But this is the code from last week. We went over how to make HTML and CSS files, how to code them to work. So this is like the meta stuff, the link for the style sheet. We went over the body, headers, H1 elements, div elements, navigation, and resizing, as well as paragraph elements. And this is what the CSS looks like, which looks more complicated than it is, I promise. And this is what the website itself looks like. And it's just a very simple little, as you can see here. So today we're going to kind of build on the things that we learned last week and go over a couple of things that were asked about last week. So this week we're going to be working on this little website, which is an offshoot of what we learned last week. And I'm going to show you how that works. So inside my code over here, I built a little trials page so we can see how things work and kind of play with them without really changing our base code, but we can add things to our base code. So I went ahead and put all these elements in, and I'm going to take a second to explain what they are. So obviously up here we have our meta stuff, our link to our style sheet, which shows how things are going to be displayed, whereas HTML is the meat, the style sheet is kind of the potatoes to make the whole meal edible. Then you have the body, which is what actually shows up on the web page. We have a header element, which shows up at the top. Then we have our div elements, which in this case is going to contain 3 pictures that I pre-chose. And then we have a paragraph element that just has some text that we're going to look at. And then this is the CSS for this code, so everybody can kind of see what we're looking at. And now I'm going to go back to the website and I will explain what we're doing today. The 2 things that I got most requested last week to go over were display, how display works when working in CSS, and media queries. The fun thing about both of these things is they're both CSS elements. What a media query is built for is for making something change based on the viewport or the size of the screen that you have available. So this was what would make your websites mobile friendly versus just desktop friendly. And then display elements change how things display on the web page. Regardless of what you're looking at, you can change it based on the media query, but the display element is really the heat of what we're going to be working on today. So we have this nice little div element that's containing all 3 of our pictures. And inside we have each one that's classed as a picture, so we can change the sizes or certain elements of the pictures together, but each one has its own ID in case there's things about each picture individually that we want to change. And what I mean by this is when you look here, this first picture is a rectangular picture in that its horizontal mass is bigger than its vertical mass. So it displays differently than the second picture, which is also horizontal, but its vertical mass is bigger than its horizontal mass. So by changing one element or the other on these, whether height or width, will change all of them universally. It will keep them structured in the original frame rate that they were done. So some things are 1 by 1, some things are 1 by 2, depending on how it's dispersed. So when you change height, it will keep that in your display. So for instance, I changed all of the heights on this over here in pix to 200 pixels. So they're all the same height, But when you look at them, you can tell that their widths are all different. And that's what I mean by keeping the ratio by only changing one element of height or width. So today we're going to work on a couple of things with display. We're going to work on inline display, block, flex, and grid. And I have notes to keep us on track today. So inline is the easiest way to explain this is where when you see pictures and the text is next to them. And I will show you. Right now they're on block. So I'm going to show you what they look like when I put them on inline. And you'll find that some of these look the same and some of them look different, but it's how they work that's important. So inline here, because the div element in and of itself is taking up this entire space right here, it will not show this text to the side. Now, if I wanted to show these with the text to the side, I would actually float them to the direction that I wanted them to go. So if I float to the left, it means the pictures are going to go to the left of what I'm doing. And then we're going to go over here and see, now you can see where the div element itself has moved over and the text is now to the right, which is the clear space that was created by moving the div element over. When you change the div element, it'll automatically resize to contain whatever is inside of it based on what it's supposed to contain and how it's supposed to show those items. So then we're going to go back over to our code. And now we'll look at the block. The block element is going to make it take up space like a header. So as you can see, we've gone back to the text underneath. This is taking up the entire space from left to right, just like the header is taking up the entire space from left to right. That is what a block element does. It makes it take up that area within your web page. So then we're going to go back over here and we're going to look at flex. Now, flex is a wonderful thing because when you set something to display flex, the item itself is not flex displayed. It will distribute the items inside of it into a flex display. So while this doesn't really change much when we look back over here, except for they're left aligned, if we wanted to change the elements inside of this, we would actually have to go into our little thing about pics here and change the margins inside of this for it to change the way it displays on the web page. Otherwise, it would stay all left aligned. But as you can tell, it has evenly distributed all of these throughout because it gave it an automatic margin, which evens out the margins all around. You can also change this by giving it a certain width or giving it a certain height to take up, and it will adjust everything accordingly in that way. So we'll go ahead and remove that. And then we'll go over grid. Now, grid elements and flex elements are going to be similar and not. Now, as you can see, I put in grid and now they're aligned vertically instead of horizontally. Grid layouts can be very confusing. So I will always direct people to W3 Schools because they have an entire layout module where they go over all of the things about how you can set up grids. Grids are really cool because you can do different properties about how you want it displayed, but you can also choose these spaces in between. So you can create column gaps and row gaps to really change how things look. Tables are very similar to this. It will keep the same as you're going through. Tables are great when you have certain elements that you're working on and then like sub elements that you want to classify in one direction or another. So those can be really fun and really helpful. But grids are not my favorite thing to work with. So just being fair and honest here. My favorite thing, and I've shown this before, but I do a lot of flex because I like to design elements based on where other elements are and really get them kind of moving with each other. I like display-wise, I like things to move cohesively together. I like them to intuitively place based on where other things are. So Flex has been a really big part of me doing that. And then I will go ahead and go back into our picks themselves and set them to an auto margin so they're nice and spaced and just visually pleasing to look at. They have space in between them. They take up the entire left to right, and they just kind of move across the page. Makes it just a little bit nicer. But, you know, for design elements, you're going to go with what for you is more aesthetically pleasing, which is why we went over them. The other thing I'm going to show you is media queries. Media queries, as I've said before, are for when you have different view sizes to change how elements are displayed. This is important when you're going from desktops to mobiles or mobiles to tablets, and they all have different like pixelation across and how much that they can display. So I'm going to show you the basis of how to write a media query, and then I'll show you how it works. So the basis of how to write a media query, and this is going to be in your CSS, is you do at and then media. And that tells it that it's a media query. And then we do only screen. And then you put in the specification of what you're doing. So mine is max width of, let's say, 600 pixels, the average phone screen. And then we close the parentheses, and then we're going to make our changes here. So because I'm displaying in Flex, Flex will display in rows as a default. So I'm going to change my Flex direction. So that way, instead of in rows, it'll display in columns. I believe I spelled that right, but there are some days. Yeah, cool. I think that's right. I'm actually going to check myself right now because it's important to do so. So we'll do flex direction CSS because that's the language we're using. And I like W3 schools, as we all know. So here it'll go over which flex directions you can do, default value being row. And we're just going to scroll down until we find what we're looking for. If I can find it, yeah, column. Flexible items are displayed vertically. Okay, so column is correct. We're gonna go back in here, make sure I typed it all out, put the semicolon at the end because I need to make sure that's correct. And that all looks good. So now, when we go over here and go into this, take this out of full screen, and it should, if it's gonna let me change my media screen here, which it may not. I can't get to my bottom corner. That is very strange. It won't let me change it. Okay. Technical issue here. I'm wondering why that's still red.
Also, if you guys have any questions for me as she goes through some of these things, like I know certain like aspects of just coding in general can seem a little daunting, but you do have someone that is actively like, you know, live with you guys. So feel free to go ahead and ask any questions that you might have, put them in the chat so that Mia knows where she needs to, you know, go a little deeper into or maybe explain a little bit more. But yeah, also for those that weren't able to make it to last week's workshop, we do have that YouTube recording. And I'll actually post that in the chat below in just a few minutes.
Well, besides the technical issue that I'm having here of this not wanting to work with me, which is a little frustrating. Why won't it let me resize this? I have never had my computer do this before.
Strange.
We are just having a whole issue because it should be right here.
A quick question.
Mhm.
So okay, I actually want to practice with you practicing, like on my desktop, on my laptop. How do I access that screen, like where you're putting all those codes in, and then you go
This
check your
screen?
work? Yeah.
Okay, so this screen is it's a app called Visual Studio Code.
Visual Studio.
And you
Okay.
are more than welcome, like when you go to download it and stuff, if you have any issues. I am on Career Karma and Twitter. So you can message me if you have any issues downloading it. But this has been one of my favorite coding applications. I actually use this all the time, and it's what my entire website is coded in.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. So you said the
so
Visual
it was
Studio
kind of,
Code.
yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna jump on it.
Move this back
Hey,
over.
Mia, I got a question for you about Visual Studio Code.
Yeah.
So when you go in to Visual Studio Code and you're doing it, do I have to open up my web page in a browser in order to see the progress of my code, or do they have a function in there where I can check my work?
So Visual Studio Code has an extension, and I will show it to you. So this extension right here inside, it's Live Server 5.6.1.
Okay.
And when I have my HTML pages up over here, I can right click them and it will say open with Live Server. And then I can open them and it will pull it up in my browser for me. So I don't have to go look for this URL. I don't have to try and force the browser to do anything. Visual Studio actually pulls it up for my browser.
Okay.
So I do not know why this will not let me resize it at all. But as I resize it, I'm just going to force code it to do what I want. So that way I can show you guys what it should do. But this is what it should do when you tighten the screen up under 600 pixels, is it'll show up in this column, and then everything else, like the paragraph element, will automatically resize for the screen. So I just wanted to show you guys what it would look like if I could get my computer to properly work with me right now. Technical issues happen to the best of us. Don't be afraid of them. You'll figure it out. But yeah, so I guess we can move into questions a little. Well, I'll show you guys. For those who weren't here last week, these are all the basics that I use to build this site. So what I'm teaching you now is the same stuff that I use to build everything that you see here, from the front page to the little about me section that tells you about who I am, to my contact information, which has my LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, GitHub, and email. You can also sign up for the subscriptions of getting an email every time I post something to my blogs themselves, where I blog once a week, every week, about learning coding and design. So now if anybody has any questions, I'm totally up for that because I ran out of things to talk about.
Is it the technical issues that?
Yeah, because with the technical issues, that I can't really show how the inline flex works and stuff like that with the media query. So it'll definitely be something that I'll add next week. This next week was going to go over some of the more advanced display techniques. So
on
I get it
your
figured out in the meantime.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
On your screen, I saw you type in the Silent Wars just a few seconds ago. Like you typed
Oh
it on
yeah,
your
that's my
browser.
website.
That's your website. Okay.
Yeah, I will put it in the chat for you.
Okay, gotcha. Because I'm gonna follow everything you're doing, and then I'm just gonna try to copycat it, and then just work from that. Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
I
Thank you.
actually have, so when you go to my website, if you go to my GitHub, my entire web page, when I upload anything new, I actually upload the entire web page to my GitHub as well. So
Okay.
if you're feeling like you want to really challenge yourself and take those elements, you are more than welcome to go on to my GitHub and get that code and be able to follow along with that as well.
Sweet.
Can you code in GitHub like how you were doing in Virtual Studio Code? Can you do that in GitHub as well?
You can, but the thing with Visual Studio is that it will help you. And it's great for new coders because there's certain things like you'll put the wrong type of colon at the end of a line of code, and it will catch that and put that nice little red line underneath it so you can see where errors are. So it's helpful that way. It also, certain elements like paragraph elements, they have a beginning and an end because they contain things, whereas image elements do not because the SRC for the image itself is within the element at the beginning, so it doesn't need a closing tag. So it will help with those kinds of things and making sure that you're getting both sides of what you're doing and really just fine-tuning what you're doing and learning how to do it the proper way.
Okay, and I got one more question, then I'm done.
You're good.
As far as just learning to read code and understand how code works and corresponds with one another from HTML to CSS,
Mhm.
are there any websites or anything that you would recommend to go and look at and actually like see the code and try and read it and break it down so you can kind of better know what you're looking at?
I do actually have a few, and Career Karma was one of the best resources that I had for finding these things, as well as my squads. I personally have learned from freecodecamp.org, which leads you through HTML, CSS, and JavaScript at a very, what I feel is a good pace, but it is a very visual in that it will give you a problem and walk you through it text-based, and then you go and you learn the code. There's other apps out there like Udemy that have actual courses you can buy and go and do those courses. There's also things like Kenzie Free and App Academy that have free courses that will teach you the basics of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Those are all computer-based programs. I know that some of them have some crossovers for mobile, but mostly computer-based in that you want to be on a computer to use them. If you like applications better, things like Mimo, which is M1MO, that will teach you HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, along with giving you some challenges as you go to make sure your understanding is complete. There's also apps like Grasshopper, which is JavaScript specific. Now, I know that seems like a lot, but learning from multiple sources is one of the best ways to make sure that your comprehension of what you're learning is where it's supposed to be so you can move on to the next step.
Okay. So I actually downloaded Grasshopper actually yesterday, and it gave me a few games actually, which was coding, like just flags and colors, and so is that what pretty much coding is like? Pretty much as far as like
Some of
putting a
it,
picture,
yes.
yeah. Okay, so that was just
Some
like
of it
basic.
is very interactive and fun, and you get to see the direct result immediately. And that's one of the things that I love about JavaScript, especially the way that Grasshopper approaches it, is because Grasshopper makes it fun and makes you want to interact. Whereas, like, some of it is just really drudging, and you're kind of like going through the muck, and you don't really see the benefits of it until you get towards the end of it. So it's a little give and take. You're going to find things that you love and you get, and it just makes sense like that. And then you're going to find things that you're like, I didn't know I needed to learn to speak Chinese in a day, but here we are. So, I mean, it's one of those things. You're going to have your ups and downs, but you'll get through it. And that's what resources are for.
Sweetness. So I have freecodecamp.org, Kenzie Free, App Academy, Mimo, it's M1MO, and Grasshopper, because I'm going to access all those. Okay, sweet.
Yeah, and
Thank
if you guys ever have any questions about anything we go over in here, you guys can, like I said, message me on Career Karma, hit me up on Twitter. Like, my social media is always open. If there's any way that I can help, if I can do it, I will. So
Sweetness. So how can I find you on Career Karma? Is it like your picture on there? I forgot your name. I'm so sorry.
yeah, you're fine. It's Mia Peace, MIAPEACE, like peace, love, and joy. My children just came in.
And so we're also right after this call, or actually maybe even like right now as we're speaking, I will be adding each one of you guys to a squad that I just created specifically for this weekly workshop. So you guys can jump in there, and Mia will be a resource just like I will, Timur will be.
Nice.
And we'll go there and make sure that, you know, step by step, you get your first website up and running, start building your portfolio out, and then we want to share that in discussions. You know, it's an exciting first step for sure.
I honestly forgot that you made that.
Yeah. So yeah, no worries. So I will be adding each one of you guys. So look out for that squad notification, because that will be coming to you.
And that's going to be on the the Karma.
Yeah, the Career Karma app.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's called. Also, if you just want to join manually, I will go ahead and try to find each one of you and add you. But the squad is just called Website Workshop.
Gotcha.
And the handle is like www. So.
Yeah, and he, like I said, he just made that, so it's right on the top of my notifications. So if you guys post in there, I will definitely be keeping that where I can see it, so I can help you guys out.
All right.
Do we have any other questions for Mia for the moment? Anything that she's either gone through in the past workshop, this workshop, certain things that you have about her experiences? It's free game. She's here as a resource for you guys.
Yeah, like you guys can ask me about Kenzie and stuff too, or boot camps in general, because I did a lot of research on boot camps. So whatever you guys got, if I can answer it, I will.
So Mia, when you started coding, did you know anything about coding? Were you like a tech savvy type of person?
So when I first started coding, I was actually in high school, and I had taken a computer science class, but it was back in the early 2000s, you know, so it was like Microsoft Office and keyboarding, and that's what my school considered computer science. And I blew through that coursework in like the first 2 weeks. So my wonderful teacher, trying to keep me engaged, was like, hey, why don't you take this computer home, take it apart and put it back together and make sure it works. And so I did that in like 3 days, and I was like, okay, that was cool, but like I didn't really like doing that. What else you got for me? And he was like, well, what about coding? Because like that'll take you a minute. And we all know about like the MySpace phase and like getting to be able to customize your stuff with some basic HTML and stuff like that. And that was really where I started with coding. Was I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was for. I was just like, oh, it's a new challenge. And then I just loved it. I loved being able to take an idea and just build an entire concept of that idea without having to know how to draw, without having to know how to like really do these certain design elements. I could build something. And I built a couple of web pages, and then I set it down. Because I'm from Alaska, my hometown was very manual labor over tech. Like they didn't really see it going anywhere, especially back home. So I stepped out of coding, and then, you know, every so often I'd step back into it and be like, oh yeah, I love this, I love this, I love this. And then I'd get pulled away in a different direction. Last year, my disability took a turn about 5 years ago and just kind of degraded really fast. And last year I was actually pulled out of being able to do any type of manual labor work. So I was forced to reassess my life, and it's completely fine. Like life hands us cards and we all have to deal with it. So not the biggest deal to me. I don't really make a big deal about it. It's my life and it's cool. I'm just working with what I got. So I reassessed last year and was like, okay, so what can I still do that, you know, isn't going to be affected by the fact that like I can't stand for long periods of time and stuff like that. And I came back to coding, and after like 8 months of fighting with it, Career Karma came up on my Facebook, and like it was just one thing after another of like I found Career Karma. They gave me the resources. I got to actually talk to the CEOs. I talked to Ruben. I talked to Artur. I talked to Timur, and like it just made everything so tangible and real to me. And I'm a head first kind of person. And I was like, you know what? I've always, always, always loved coding. Like, why not take this off? Like, I've got kids. I've got to show them that, you know, we're more than our disability. Like, we have something to offer.
Right.
And so I legitimately just jumped in head first. And they hooked me up with Kenzie and a couple other resources. And from the moment that I did my first assessment with Kenzie, I was just like, this is where I want to be. And we've just taken off from there. And it's just been an amazing journey. And that's why I'm here now, is because I want to continue to help other people go through the same thing that I just went through and be able to change their lives and just really do something that they're passionate about.
Right. So what would you say was your biggest challenge through coding?
My biggest challenge, I think, through coding was the last year or so of it. Because I'm getting close to 30 now. I'll be 30 next year. And there's
Welcome.
like this idea, there's this idea that, you know, there's an age that's too old for coding. And I was really worried that like I wasn't going to get back into it in time, or I wasn't going to be able to learn like I had previously, and a lot of imposter syndrome that we find everywhere in tech.
Right.
And I was like fighting, but I wasn't putting my whole heart into it. And I just like the time wasn't right or whatever. And I kept making excuses for myself. And that was like the hardest part, was when I let myself get in the way of my career and where I wanted to go. And that's something that happens with imposter syndrome. You get in your own way. You feel like you're not qualified enough, or there's other people out there who know so much more than you, or who are so much more valuable. And like the biggest thing that I can tell anybody who ever comes on any of these calls is you are valuable. Your perception, your perspective on life is valuable to tech. Tech is going to change the way that society views the world. And the only way that you can make sure that people like you are a part of it is to take that step to be a part of the way that tech changes. And so like we all need to be a part of this dining room discussion that is the tech industry. And we all need to make sure that we're all participating and inviting everybody to participate, because that's the only way we're going to make sure that this goes in the direction it needs to.
Wow. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, I
well,
think
I don't think 30 is like the dinosaur age. I turn 31 tomorrow.
Well, and like I think it's such a weird thing for me, because I don't feel like 30 is all that old. Like I guess I'm weird. Like
it's
80
really
is
not.
old.
They're really not. I'm 35. And people still don't even
Right.
believe I'm 35.
Word,
Right,
I'm
and
right there with you. I'm 35 too. Happy birthday to whoever just turned 31.
yeah. And here's the big thing is like, so I'm currently in school at Kenzie, and we have ladies in there that are in their 50s, and they are kicking ass and taking names. Like these women have perspectives that I'm just like, please impart your knowledge on me, because
Right.
they're beautiful people, and the way that they look at things and the intelligence and education that they have from their lifetime is amazing. And I want to see what they're going to do in tech. Like I really don't believe that there is an age break in tech, but like we have this preconceived notions of what's expected of us. And I feel like tech is just like this big modge podge of what we can be, and we all need to be a part of it. I don't care your age, race, gender, nothing. None of that matters to me. Your perspective is what I want to see. And like I don't know, I get real passionate about this kind of stuff, is because like I want to see everybody's stuff, because everybody's perspective is so intrinsic to who they are. And like the only way we're going to get past anything in life is just to understand where everybody else is coming from and build a world that's inclusive. And that's like where my passion is.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
I think that's super important. I think Mia, you, yeah, every time that you like come on here and you kind of share that type of perspective is super important, because when you really think about it, like I actually just posted, you guys can see this post within discussions. It's called The History of Web Design. And when I was just researching for it, the very first website that was posted using HTML was in 1991. And in around 1995, there were only about 600 websites on the internet. Now,
Wow.
can you imagine there were 600 websites in 1995? Fast forward just what? That's 25 years. In 25 years, which is really not that long ago, right?
No.
25 years later, we are just at the very beginning, like the very tip of that iceberg. And there's going to be so much disruption, so much innovation. There is so much room for growth, and to really play a part in that is going to be extremely, important, especially coming from all sorts of different backgrounds. And so the whole non-traditional backgrounds breaking into tech, I think we actually have like a leg up, like there's a lot of value in having a different perspective and bringing that to the table when you're in a team, right? Or building whatever it is that you want to build and bring and create into this world. And there's just like collectively, like we're just talking about, like now we're talking about resources and like putting minds together, right? For the first like 3, 4, maybe like 5 years of your life, like maybe you don't remember much, so like your memory kind of like your memory starts
dial
like,
up. Like,
yeah.
Come on
Yeah,
now.
and
I remember that. Yeah, I remember those days.
yeah, it's like been so, it was yesterday ago, you know? Like, it was literally just yesterday. But
Right.
so we also have like a collective intelligence here, because with each year that you are alive, you're learning new things, right? They're like everyone here in this entire like the 25 participants that are here right now, you guys all have unique perspectives and unique experiences that have tremendous value for any team that you join, whether it's like your boot camp, you're either self-taught or you're joining like the tech workforce. They're going to really need that type of like perspective. And so there's just so much room. It's so ripe and you guys are so early that there's so much to just really take advantage of. And it all starts with something like this today, where you go off and you take what Mia's taught, you take what she's like walked through, and you implement it, right? So she actually legitimately made and hosted her website in under like half an hour, which is ridiculous, right? Like the fact that
And
you can
lost
do
it
that,
twice.
and lost it twice. And so the fact that you can literally do something like this, you can create something, you have an idea, you do some typing, you do some hosting, you do some Google searching, and it's online in less than 30 minutes is ridiculous, right? And so that very first step, we want everyone to go ahead and share those little wins, because we want to document this journey. It's going to be an incredible thing to see.
The other thing I was going to add on to that too is there's a few people who have actually like gone and followed the tutorial and were able to build the site kind of based on something that was more important to them, which is really what I wanted to see you guys do with it. I didn't want a million sites that all said the same thing with the same picture. I want you guys to like personalize this and make it scream who you are. And just getting to see those, like, it gets me so pumped to see you guys taking that step out there and putting yourself out there, because one of the biggest things that we can share to get other people into tech and to bring other people to the table is to share our story. And that's what CK is about, is sharing our stories and helping other people find the same resources that we so easily have access to. And like, if you guys aren't listening to the Breaking Into Startups podcast, get your butts over there, because I listen to that stuff while I'm coding all the time. And there's so many stories on there that are just relatable, because they take it from this big idea of who a person is to really their story about how they got to where they are. And it really sets you up for success, to understand that like success is a choice. It is a choice every day to put value into yourself and to choose to pursue these things and learn and constantly be bringing in the new information and bringing in the positivity and surrounding yourself by people who are going to lift you there. And like, those are the things that you got to be focused on. You got to keep focusing on the forward. Like, we're all going to hit barriers. We're all going to hit roadblocks. We're all going to take 2 steps back. And that's what our support teams are for. That's what our squads are for. That's what the app is for when you hit those roadblocks and you need help, you sit there and you raise your hand. You say, I'm taking up space. I need help. And then we all come in and we go, yeah. And that's what we're here for.
Also, I want to give a quick shout out to Rich. Rich, are you in here? You say something, say hello.
Yes, I'm here. Hi, guys.
Hey, so Rich actually posted his first website, and his website, so he just started this from like ground zero. He knew nothing before ISM. He knew nothing before last week's workshop, and he took exactly what Mia said. He implemented it, and he created a site that's actually starting to log or document his like his child, like his child has like a love for monster trucks, and he's just like created a website that has like monster trucks on it, and he'll be able to show his son and his son by like just seeing how like his dad was able to, you know, take something and create it and document it is like really, really awesome. Like, look at that, right? Like, that shows something about Rich, that he's like, I love my son loves monster trucks, like this is something that I can build for him. Making it fun, you know, making it mean something to you. So Rich, huge shout out for that. That's incredible.
Oh, huge shout out to Mia and you, Melvin. and all of the Career Karma family. It is a wonderful community. I love it. And on that, my son has over 100 plus monster trucks, and we need to document them and give them to the grandparents. So when they go shopping, they don't buy doubles. So that's another reason why I'm building a website to give to the grandparents as well.
Hey, if you
That
want
is
help with that,
perfect.
Rich, you let me
Yes.
know. I will totally help you with that because we have the same problem. I've got 2 boys and they collect things like out the wazoo, and I'm like, please don't buy them the same thing twice.
Exactly. Very good.
See,
Thank you,
this
guys.
is, yeah. See, that's actually like a perfect example right there. Rich found like a problem that he like had, and he was like, you know what, I can create a website for it, and test out, like just building stuff, like implementing images and just like colors and all of these different things, and just like having fun with it, like having it be of like utility in like his own life and his own personal context. And each one of you can probably do something with like music or like sports or whatever it is that you want to implement with your own kids if you have your own. It's just like the world of opportunity is like boundless, like there's so many things that you can create, and we have another like $1 billion idea brewing up in one of your heads. I know that for a fact.
That's why it's so important to do this little like first part too, is because you never know, like once you start creating it, because it seems like this huge big concept and so difficult, but once you take that step and start creating, you're going to realize that you can do this, that it's not as hard as it looks, and that yeah, you're going to have to invest a little bit of time in it, but the applications are endless.
I've also, that website, I have broken it and rebuilt it over and over again over the weekend. Like I squashed the picture, I made it bigger, replaced pictures, just dabbled with everything on the CSS and the HTML in Visual Studio Code. It was beautiful, man. I love it.
I'm so excited that you did that because like that's like the basis of learning code is really just playing with it till you break it. You start to live for those errors where you're just like, I figured out how to break that, so don't do that again.
That's actually incredible. And so we also want, the rest of like the community that's on this right now, and we'll be adding more people to this movement as well, right? Because it's all about just starting off with that first step. And like you'll never know, like in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, like fast forward 3, 4, 5 months from now, who knows what type of like incredible things you'll be creating. So it starts with, and the reason why we want you guys to go ahead and post these in discussions is because it's kind of like a community movement, right? Like sometimes it's different when you're in a silo and you're kind of like building and creating stuff on your own. But now that you're seeing that other people are doing just, they're starting off on the exact same foot that you're starting off on, and you're just seeing the incredible things that they're building, it's a little bit more motivating. And like I said before, it kind of keeps people like me and Mia just wanting to do more of these things for you all.
Yeah, as long as the people want these things, I'll be here. And like Melvin said before, but if you guys think of things later that you want to see on these little workshops of ours, then, post them up in the squad chat so we can see them, because I do keep it all written down. I do listen to you guys. I try to respond as much as possible. So like when you guys give us feedback about what you're working on, it lets us know where you are, because I don't want to sit here and talk about things that are disinteresting or things that you guys already know or things that are too far ahead of what you're already doing. I want to meet you where you guys are so you guys can really use this resource to the fullest.
And one thing that's also, go ahead, sorry.
No, I just had a question about boot camp. So about boot camp, how is that like? Is that like a retreat, like everybody goes somewhere, or like how does that work? Like do y'all sit at a computer for like 8 hours a day, or how does that work?
So every boot camp gets run a little bit differently, and that's
Okay.
why there's so many of them. They all also cost a little bit differently, and they are run a little bit differently. Some of them are really reading based, some of them are very video based, some of them are interactive, some are not. And so you kind of just go through, for me, when I was going through my boot camp choosing phase, because you kind of go through like, do I want to learn on my own? Am I better as an independent learner? Or do I need the structure of a boot camp to kind of show me where I should go with this information? So you kind of just sit, and I always tell people, sit and decide what's important to you. Is it your schedule? That's really, really important. Is it your financial options? Do you need an ISA? Are you able to pay for it out of pocket? Do you need something that's cheap or expensive, or like what can you do? You also need to look at like what kind of community you're looking for. Are you looking for like a well tight-knit community that's going to be there every step of the way, or are you looking for someone where you can reach out if you need help, but for the most part they leave you be? Like, these are all very important questions that you need to answer for yourself before you really start looking at boot camps, because you're paying not just for the learning but also the experience of going through the boot camp. So for me, things that were important were like the schedule needed to be the same, so that way I could get my kids on the same schedule. I needed to have the availability of an ISA because I'm poor and I needed something that wasn't like student loans going to compound over time for infinity. I needed something that had deadlines and was more accessible as far as where I was going to go with my career. And then I also wanted something that felt like a family. And there were a lot of boot camps that really fit within those three niches, but Kenzie Academy was the one that I felt like I vibed with from the very beginning. Like, I talked to my advisor, I talked to my teachers, and now I'm working with my fellow students, a couple of which come to these, and being able to really connect with people on a base level that I'm going to class with was something that was very important to me. So that's why I ended up going with Kenzie in the long run, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I think Kenzie is going to be a perfect fit for everyone. Like, you kind of have to pick and choose what's important to you and really focus on that. And please remember that when you're interviewing with boot camps, they are not just interviewing you, you're interviewing them, because you're going to be paying them for a service. So ask them the questions, make sure that they fit with what you need. And if they aren't a right fit, don't feel like you have to settle. Like, there's going to be one out there that will fit what you need, and it's worth the look, because you got to remember, you're investing in your career and your life, and you need to make the decision that's best for you, not what's best for boot camp, not what's best for Susie down the road, but what's best for you and your family and your situation.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hey, Nia, can I say something to Mishi? Am I saying that right?
It's Miche. There's an accent. Yes, sir. It's okay.
Miche. I just actually finished interviewing with Flatiron, and before I accepted any offer, I made sure that I got all the information I could, not just about that school, but other boot camps. So I actually had an interview with Flatiron, had an interview with Thinkful. I got the information to see what worked best for me, and really sell yourself. Ask the boot camps, what makes you worth my investment? What separates you from these other boot camps that are interested in me? And also ask what languages that they're doing, what kind of projects. You want to make sure that you inform yourself as much before you make this decision and this commitment. It's almost like getting married all over again. Once you make that commitment, like, you're in it. So,
And
take
CK's YouTube has a lot of this stuff on there too. If this all seems overwhelming, you can go to CK's YouTube, and they go over all these different like options, like the ISA and financial options, or the scheduling options, or what marketable skills that you're looking at. And they do go over the boot camps themselves. I mean, CK has been wonderful about doing independent research on boot camps, which ones are doing what, where they're hiring to, all of the info, like that's all available. And Melvin does a really good job of posting those in our discussions as well. So, I mean, like, it's a huge resource. I feel like you could spend an entire day talking about how many resources CK has, and we would still have more to do.
And if you have literal any questions, the odds are that someone else is also going to have questions. And so you actually help out other people by posting questions on discussions. Just if you have a question of like, how do I do this? Or like, what should I think about like that? Go ahead and like use discussions as that resource, and it actually becomes like a crowdsourced thing. And then we'll also have that archived so that someone that comes in a couple months later sees Miche's post and was like, oh, I actually got a lot of value from Miche answering this question or asking this question.
Gotcha.
So,
Awesome.
Be sure to use those discussions as a resource. we're going to be having it. We're actually developing a web application too, so it's going to be very, very helpful for everyone to be able to use more freely. So exciting news. Does anyone else have any last questions before we wrap this up?
I do.
Hey, Lauren, what's your question?
Hi, Mia. I just had a dumb question, but it's probably
no
There's no
not.
such
such thing as a dumb question.
I think it's dumb, but because I've been struggling with this since I've been in TK. Using VS Code, because every time I've used it, it crashed my computer.
Oh no.
So I don't use it anymore. So it's just on my computer
Mhm.
as like a little what do you say, icon?
Yeah.
But is there any way, like, when anybody has a chance or whatever, somebody could like show me how to use VS Code?
Yeah, we could totally talk about that after we get off of here. I have a little bit of time, so I can kind of go over your specs of your computer and make sure that it's not something within your computer that's breaking it.
I was thinking it might be the specs of your computer as well.
Yeah.
Oh, it wasn't my computer. It was actually my mom's computer I was borrowing at the time. And it's a Lova something. I don't know how to say that really.
Lenovo, Lebanon, or something like that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's one of those. And I was borrowing her computer at the time when I used it, and it crashed her computer. So I had to like reboot the whole thing. And so, yeah.
Yeah, so I will get a hold of you because I believe we have several chats, but I'll get a hold of you after we get off of here. And if you don't hear with me within like 10, 15 minutes, go ahead and blow my phone up and we can totally touch base and go over that, because that's frustrating if you can't use the resource that we're using for the videos.
Yeah, because this is something I was trying to figure out, you know, how to use encoding and stuff, or just to play with, because I use the code pen every once in a while for this,
Yeah.
you know, and the other ones. But that
JS
one I
Fiddle
just
and
can't
stuff.
figure out.
Yeah,
that
so
one
for
I
anybody who
can't do.
doesn't know, CodePen has HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and it's a completely web-based browser for running code. So if you can't download one, CodePen's a good little resource for if your computer doesn't really have the power to download its own coding application.
Sandbox.
Yeah, thanks. That was the word I was looking for, but
It went past you.
it did.
Yeah.
Some days
It's
it
all
goes in one
good.
ear and out the other.
Yeah, CodePen is like GitHub, but a little different.
Yeah.
But
Mia,
it's
So-
what squad are you in?
All right, so I think
Mia
we're
is in the Moms Who Code squad.
Moms
I'm a squad lead for that one, yeah. And then I'm also in Code Famiglia and a couple of other coding squads.
Well, thank you so much, Miss Mia. I'm going to let you get back to it, and I'm going to get off.
all right. I think we are officially wrapped up with the time allotted. Thank you all again so much for joining us tonight. I went ahead and added all of you guys to the weekly workshop group. Let's use that as a place to just have the immediate kind of interactions, and then we can document all of our processes and discussions. I think this is going to be a really awesome journey. We'll go ahead and keep doing these weekly, so join us next week. Until then, let's break in. Good night.
Awesome. Peace out. You guys are
so much,
awesome.
Nia. Thank you so much.
Anytime, you know that.
All right. Bye-bye. Good night.
Later, guys.